Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Anthony Tharp again. My channel is Scamming Billions in Jamaica, and I've used that entitlement because I wanted to get people to recognize that our focus is on scamming, and not just scamming from me and my partners, and in effect, scamming from the island of Jamaica because we were involved in, still are involved in several mega real estate developments that have been handicapped and stalled for approximately 18 years by and because of corruption in the courts. Now, I've spoken about um, several incidents against us, and I know the Jamaica, and probably most of the Caribbean who have an interest in current affairs, politics, economics affecting the Caribbean. The focus has been on what happened to Mr. Usain Bolt, and 40 other persons. But I will continue to submit to everyone that's listening or viewing this video is that we're missing, most people are still missing the main event. The main event is not that Mr. Bolt got ripped off or robbed or cheated along with other persons, but the main event is scamming, crime, fraud, and let's call it fraud. Scamming, yeah, sound like it's a different thing from fraud, but it's not. Fraud is fraud, and fraud has always been a crime, and we tend to minimize the fraud because we think the scamming is being done by persons who are low level or from lower echelons of society or the community. Most are, because of they have decided to pursue a life of crime along that path, and it's often said because there aren't any other opportunities out there, which we contest, because if you have a grandmother or a grandfather and father and great grandfather, grandmother, they grew up in a world where economic opportunity, education, and all of that was virtually non-existent for most of them, especially those coming directly out of slavery and emancipation. They didn't have anything. They were dirt poor, but yet they persisted and did what was required of them to raise their families, sometimes large families. In those days, people had kids 9, 10, 6, or 15. I knew one person that had 20 something kids. And all of them grew up to be good people, and they were dirt poor. But nobody was scamming or killing people because, the excuse is there's nothing else. That's not true. There are a multitude of ways for persons to empower themselves without robbing and cheating and murdering or killing people. It's wrong, and it shouldn't be something that we condone and use as an excuse for people who are committing those crimes. So again, the main event is not about Mr. Bolt. The main event is that Jamaicans and the country, the entire nation, is being affected by people committing crimes under the guise that they work in some office someplace, or they're government workers, or they're amongst the persons working in the court system, predominantly attorneys and judges, who condone their bad behavior. And so again, my focus is there. And why am I focused there? Because the reality is that's causing most of the damage to our economy than anything else. In fact, when you look at it, fraud and scamming, hurting people, especially people you put in high places to represent you, it's the major cause of our poverty in this country. And we try to ignore it, but that's the truth. When you put people into office, government offices, they go in and rob the budget, or defraud the taxpayers, in short, scam the taxpayers. They shortchange things that should be done or in the economy that benefit the people. And when they thief up the money, as people would say, They're making sure those things don't get done. And then they become examples to other people who see them progressing, seeing them making money, and figure it's okay because they did it and get away with it. So I'm gonna go ahead and do it as well. And some people justify doing it because of that, but it's wrong. You can't justify doing the right thing and think it's something that you're proud of. Because if you were proud of it, you wouldn't be hiding it, because it's wrong. But the bottom line is some people don't care as long as they're getting paid, and the consequence of their action, irrespective of who it hurts, and it eventually will come back and hurt your very families who live in Jamaica or your friends, because when you undermine the economy and undermine the country, you're hurting everybody, and it's going to come back to bite you as well. So let's face the truth and deal with it honestly. If we are scamming people and we're defrauding people, we are criminals, and you're hurting the nation. You're not a good example, so don't think you are, because you're driving around in a vehicle. You have a big government office. You're a politician, or you're a judge, or an attorney, or a doctor. The fact is, if you're committing a crime, you are a criminal, and live with it. Live with the fact that you are a criminal. And this idea that as long as you don't get caught, it's okay. No, it's not. Somebody out there knows that you're committing a crime, and you're committing a crime against other people. You're hurting other people, and you're hurting a nation. And if you understand the concept of nation building and the importance of nation building, a nation can't survive unless people in there really work to make it, stable. It's a job for every citizen in this country to make a nation work. That's why we had civilizations in the past that were strong, powerful, and they've been recorded in history as achieving significant things. That if there were scattered people just ripping off everything and not thinking of the nation as a whole, the good of the people, and they wouldn't have achieved that, and we wouldn't have been reading about them throughout history. And believe it or not, a lot of us, and I'm going to use the term black people, a lot of us who are from African heritage, and I use the term Africa loosely because, again, the continent of what we call Africa now was not Africa at one point, but it was several different nations living on that continent. And whether it was called Kush, whether it was called Sudan, whether it was Kemet, and there are a host of other names that it was called before Europeans went and divided it. Those nations that lived there, those people, our people, were some of the most successful nation builders on the planet at that time. And something happened and tore us into and scattered us to the winds. So that's why we ended up being taken out, being dragged off, some of us as slaves, and some of us never even made it. But it's corruption. Those nations fell because people got corrupt when they started to deal with Europeans and Assyrians and people that were coming out to raid those mighty empires. It took corruption. It took people who were inside the nation to undermine the nation, and then it collapsed. And what happened? The very persons who are at the helm, the top, the leadership, the politicians, the kings, the princes, those people who are put in high regard, are held in high regard, themselves had to either flee or they were taken out by these newcomers, these fraudsters, these criminals. And you could look at Europe. I was looking at a documentary the other day, and I knew a lot of what we call treasure now, or valuables, were taken out of Africa. But these conquering nations who came in and through corruption undermined our people, they're still walking around proudly wearing our jewelry and our gold and our diamonds and our art and craft, showing our skills. They still have it in their museums, on their crowns, and the British have one of the biggest diamonds in the world stuck on the cap in the crown. The Queen had this I guess the king might be wearing it now. The queen's crown, the largest diamond in there, was taken out of Africa. Illegally, of course. Like everything else. They have gold, they have bronze, they have all kind of art that was taken out of Africa. And then they turned around and painted a picture that we were a bunch of ignoramus people running around. When writing and art and science and medicine came straight out of Africa. Now, what's the relationship between my main subject of corruption? Because those mighty nations fell because of corruption amongst their ranks. Their people were caught up with greed and selfishness and sold us out. Some of them just for beads, European beads, can you imagine? Some bead and some cloth. And we were making good cloth, we were making good textile. Whether it was pottery, cloth, you name it, we were creating textile that's still recognized as the best of the best. But we didn't see that. We sold ourselves cheap and sold ourselves out for beads that Europeans picked up and came and traded for beads, gave us muskets and guns, and gave it to us so we could kill each other while they stole from us. So looking at contemporary Jamaica, if you look at what's happening, the same thing that happened in Africa amongst those nations, it's what's happening to us now, where you have our own people killing each other, robbing each other, and bringing in instrument of terrorism and war to ruin this nation and ruin people's lives. Why? Because of selfish gain. And that's gain they could have made without going along that route. We have more people selling drugs or scamming people out of what they have, and they end up losing it. But if those people had gone about and just got into trade, cook and sell food, make drinks and sell it, bottle it, like what all those other nations and countries, first world countries, that's what the people have been doing. Now, you know, people can't live without food. They can't live without clothes. They need shelter. They need medicine. They need health care. Those are essential things that we need to survive in today's world. Yet our people don't see it. We're not going after those things. Those are the things that sustain society. And you make a lot of money dealing with those things. But because we're so short term, we go after the quick money and short life. We go after the quick money, we build a mansion or a house, and we can't even live in it. You know, our children can't enjoy it because somebody is coming to take you out because they figure they need it as well, or they want it and they don't want to work for it. So the scammers and the fraudsters who are working in government agencies, and a lot of you know them. They're working in the courts, a lot of you know them. And the thing about it, you know, is sadly, those of us who aren't involved in crime, we see what's happening and we're scared to do anything about it. And yeah, rightly, some people are scared that they might get hurt. But you know the reality, why we get hurt, why they were able to take us out of Africa and all of that good, bad stuff, good for the Europeans and good for other nations, but bad for us, was because our fear prevented us from uniting and building a united front, a community that we could fight and defeat that cruel part of our history. And if you look at, again, history, West Africa especially, the nations there that made up their minds that they were going to resist and fight, they prevented a lot of their people from being taken. And in fact, it wasn't a whole bunch of them, but a few of them fought against slavery and kept their people safe. So again, I'm here again reaching out to everybody that's viewing this. Share the information I'm giving. Share. You know, hit that button, not because I'm trying to get you to get me to make money off the YouTube videos, but because I need you to understand the importance of what I'm saying, and that we need to share it and reach out to people who may be scared. You may be scared, but you can participate in the privacy of your home online unanimously, anonymously, sorry, and through anonymously we unite and we create a movement that can make a major difference. So again, my role is to share what my experiences have been, and prove to you that corruption really tears this nation down and it destroys individuals. And it's not just on one occasion. As I said, our problem started with when we started to do business in Jamaica and developments. And oddly enough, when we came in, we were told that you'd have to go spend money with people to get your permits and all of that. I made up my mind from I got in, and told people, no, I'm not going to be paying anybody to approve our projects, because if we do that, anybody, they have control of us. They'll always be coming back. And I was able to go through and got projects, major projects approved that people said we couldn't have. And in fact, one gentleman, he owned one of those name brand real estate companies at the time. He was a pretty nice guy. He came to me and he said, listen, he has contacts with everybody and everybody. And all I have to do is give him $2 million, and he would make sure we got our letters to proceed and our permits and approval in a short time. And I told him, no, I'm not going to be going along that route because I don't want anybody to own me. And just like with our projects, people are telling me, and have said to me in the past that, once you start working XYZ and this one and that one, they're going to come down there and extort you and intimidate you about being paid for you to complete your project. And like I told them, and I'm saying to you, it's not going to happen, because I'm not playing that game. Anybody that thinks they're going to come down and intimidate me or my workers or anybody on site, they're making a big mistake. Because just like how they can come down there and try to intimidate people, people like that have been taught lessons in the past. Now we're not going that route. We're not encouraging it. And so, again, it starts with one or two persons standing up. Because as long as you allow people to come in and intimidate you, next thing they're coming, they're demanding your children, your girl, your female children. They're demanding that. They're demanding things from you that, you can't afford to give up, or it's going to ruin your life or ruin your kids' life or your family's life. And then they threaten you that, they're going to take your life if you don't. But unless we stand up, those things are going to continue. And the reality again is, how many of us can afford to run out of Jamaica or escape Jamaica and go elsewhere? Not too many. I'm pretty sure the 3-point-something million of us that's on the island, we won't be getting any visas to go anywhere soon. But why should you have to run out of your own country because of very few people? Because these criminals are not thousands and thousands of people, It's a few who form the core of that movement. They recruit other people who are themselves desperate or strung out and get them to carry out their ill will on other people. But the vast majority of people, which is you and I, or me, your family, your friends, we sit there and we allow them to come in and intimidate us. And from all indications, the way things are going in Jamaica, it's not a matter of whether you'll be hurt by criminals or not. It's a matter of when. When will we be hurt? When will you have to suffer? When you start knowing somebody, or everybody knows somebody that was robbed or cheated or you name it. Literally everybody in this country knows somebody who's gone through that. You realize how close this is to home. How long can you survive without being affected by these criminals? So, again, reaching out, I've reached out to a lot of people, content makers on YouTube, and I'm saying to them, and they're expressing anger and dismay and shock about what happened to Mr. Bolt. Sorry. But again, Mr. Bolt and Mr. Bolts of the future will be multiplied significantly if we don't stand up. So each of those content makers that are expressing shock and dismay and exposing, don't just expose it, organize the people you have that's on your channel, get them to come together and come up with strategies. I mean, we can link each other, come up with strategies that we can use to expose these people. And while a lot of us might be scared of dealing with the criminals that's in the streets, that lives in these communities and aren't subject to any kind of remorse about what they're doing in terms of hurting society, we don't have to focus on those criminals first. Those criminals will continue to do their ill will or acts on the community as long as the criminals that we have in government, in the courts, parading as attorneys who have taken vows to protect the economy, not the economy, the constitution and the laws, and to assist the courts to bring justice amongst all of us as a nation. If we can clean, not if, it's only when we clean up that those organizations, we see law echelon criminals, those people at the law echelons of society who think it's okay to cheat, rob, scam people, those people will now realize that the community, the island, the nation is not willing to put up with it anymore, because we're cleaning out the primary houses, the examples of those people who are hurting this nation most. And I say they're hurting the nation most because they should be examples of doing the right thing, and they're not. And when they think people aren't aware, the very people who are down in the echelons of society, the lower echelons of society, who commit crimes, know them, see them, because the very people who they're committing these crimes for and in support of are the same people these people that we have in higher places are in contact with. So they know it's only the people who are naive, who are growing up in homes, who go to church and pretend that, and some of them really don't, because they're sheltered by family and parents. They don't know what's going on until it reaches them at their place of home, their private domain. Then that's when people realize how dangerous this thing is to us. And again, I've had several experiences, so I'm not just talking off the top of my head. Not just talking about one experience with our projects and the developments with the judges and the courts. As a matter of fact, that's why you have to believe that there's a greater power that most of us call God, that's in the universe, that sees what's going on and directs our path. He puts us in places that we wonder sometimes, why are we here? But I've gone beyond that. I've realized that there's a reason why God puts us in places that seem to be, against us and our ability to live a good and clean and pure life. But that's not what God is doing. God is putting us in places that we're conscious of what's going on, so we can learn how to overcome these. And if we ourselves can't do it personally, then we can show other people how to overcome. So, my experience in Jamaica, which I didn't expect, was when I got back to Jamaica and decided to work in Jamaica, was that Jamaicans, especially people in the upper echelons of society, who you expect to want to see this country progress, I thought those were the persons that would be encouraging and doing everything to make sure we're a success. It turns out that those are the people who have been holding us back, holding us down, and the people who are struggling with their basic means of survival, that they aren't aware of all of this. and they only feel the brunt of it when the economy crashes, or prices increase, or there's inflation, and you name it. But inflation, bad economies, and all of that result not because of the poor, not because of those people who are down there struggling and working minimum wage. They aren't the ones causing the problem. It's the upper echelons of society that's always the cause of the demise of society. They're too greedy, they're corrupt, they don't care about other people or the masses of the people, and so they do everything to empower themselves regardless of who they hurt. And typically they hurt the vast majority of this nation. And if you look at other countries, you wonder why they have so many civil wars going on. And a lot of people don't know that we have civil wars going on in South America, all over South America. I don't even know if they fixed the one in Colombia. Mexico has a major civil war going on. How many people know that? Colombia, Venezuela right now, Ecuador, all of them literally have civil wars going on. Nicaragua has serious issues going on there right now. And we're not aware of it. But those are the things that cause society to collapse. And why are we having those wars? Because the rich, the powerful, the greedy, the corrupt, they are distracting people with these wars so they can steal from the very people who don't even know why they're fighting. And it's the same thing that's happening in Jamaica. The people who you expect to know that society needs to be stable and knows that the vast majority of the people of the country need to have a living wage where they can survive and raise their family, they don't care. All they care about is being greedy and figuring, well, we'll keep money abroad so we can get off the island when things do pop. But the reality is that's why you have nations collapsing. And it hasn't changed. It's the same thing throughout history. As I would say, the monster merely changes its shape, but it's the same thing repeated over and over again. And until we get really conscious of this and get together and fix it, we'll have these problems. So sometimes people look at it and they throw up their hands and give up because there's no hope. When you consider all that's happening, all the pain and suffering, and you wonder why. Why? Because we aren't standing up to do anything. So again, reaching out to you, reaching out to everybody that's watching this, share the video, share the information. If you know people that don't have the means to look at the video, just call them and have a discussion about the subject matters that we're discussing here. And say, listen, I want to get together and do something. And work in your community to build a consensus amongst a few people, and you'll be surprised at the significant changes that you see can occur when those individual groups from community start melding together and coming up with policy to make a change. And I say coming up with policy to make a change, especially with how we deal with our politicians and our political leadership. We have to change how this scenario works. The narrative is that we elect these people, we put them in office with the expectation that they're going to work for the betterment of everybody. And it turns out, on a scale of 1 to 10, 8 out of 10, those 8 percentages or 80% of that 100% are looking out for themselves at the cost of everybody else. So that 80% of those people put in office who merely go in there to look about themselves, whether they're just trying to hold on to a big salary and they don't care what the other people are doing to damage the economy, or whether they're scamming to empower themselves so they have millions and millions of dollars in their bank accounts here or hidden someplace else, it amounts to the same thing. One is desperately trying to hold on to income. The other is ripping off the country, and in order to try to safeguard that income coming in, they close their eyes to what's going on with its cheating and all of that by politicians, judges, and attorneys. But it comes back to bite us. It comes back to hurt us because it's unsustainable. You can't have people ripping off the country, ripping off people in the country, and think it's going to go unchecked. People are going to get to the point where they won't deal with it any longer. So we can come up with policy to change that before we end up in major catastrophes. Because again, I remind that every failed nation starts to fail when we have public officials being corrupt. And if you look at the stats, every failed nation starts with a collapse of justice in the society, the judiciary. So when you have a judicial system that's corrupt, that's the first move or the first event that will cause the nation to collapse, because people can't get justice. Then you find law enforcement falling quickly behind there because the courts are corrupt. Law enforcement is going to be corrupt. And the leadership of those persons, the politicians, the courts, law enforcement, the civil service, civil servants are corrupt because the leadership is corrupt. So again, we can't fix our problems unless we fix corruption. But we can change policy. Instead of letting politicians believe we work for them, let's turn it around. Let's make sure before we elect anybody to office, we sit with them, we counsel them and school them and say, this is what we want done when you get elected. Not come to some major political campaign or forum and say, as a politician, I'm going in to do this. Now when they come to sit down and hear from the people and say, we're tired of this, we want this done, we're electing you when you're going, you do this, because if you don't, you're out. We're going to pull your salary. You won't be able to run for office again. And that will help us to develop programs that will encourage our own people to now step up, become leaders, because we will have people who are ready to step into the place of those bad politicians. You hire somebody and they're not working right, what do you do with them? You fire them. We don't do that with politicians and the corrupt. You have a court system that's filled with corrupt judges. We don't fire them. They're there handing out sentences, and who knows how many bad rulings they're making deliberately. It's one thing to have a judge that's mediocre, and incompetent, and makes mistakes with simple logical stuff. Ignore the facts. Get in there with all this emotion, and instead of ruling on the evidence, the facts, the truth, and the law, they come there with all the emotions and decide to ruin people's lives because they are. A judge can't afford to do that, but we have them. Like every place else, sometimes you go to the hospital and you end up with a doctor that's, they come to the hospital with their home problems, and they take it out on the people. You have other doctors that understand people are there to be treated with respect, and they offer the best service possible. The same thing happens in the courts. Same thing happens with the police, law enforcement. You have some of those officers that are excellent. They know how to communicate with people. They have others that go out there with a bully attitude. In fact, going back to the court, I was in court a couple months ago, and I had to say to the judge, you're not going to bully me. I say, no, I'm not here for you to try to bully me into a position, because she was trying to get me to do something that the court's rules say the other people should have done, and they didn't do it, but I must now bend over backwards to accommodate them. I said, no, there are rules for a reason. And she's going to tell, why don't I said, no, you're not going to bully me into that position. And then she's not trying to, what are you doing? If they're supposed to do something and they don't do it, and then you're going to try to get me to go do something so to accommodate them before the court has jurisdiction, then what are you trying to do? But I'm just saying that's how society is across the board. You're going to have that. You go down the street, you have vendors, some of them have a nasty attitude. Some of them are the nicest people on earth. Some restaurants you go into, you believe you're going in there to be done a favor. Because the owner of the restaurant, they don't give you a smile, they don't welcome you, they don't do this. They put the stuff on and literally throw it on the counter and give it to you, pay your money. No smile, no communication. Some restaurants you're going to, or eateries you're going to, are the nicest people. You're going to go back to them. Sometimes the food not even so good, but because the service is good, you'd rather go there and deal with them as opposed to deal with the nasty attitude. The same thing with retail shops. You go into some retail shops or businesses and the attitude of people are so nasty, you don't want to go back. You don't want to spend your money there. Other people, you go to them and they're the nicest people in the world, and you sit there for 10 hours to get served, as opposed to go deal with that nasty attitude in the other business. But it all stems from us accepting mediocrity and people with just nasty, bad attitudes who think it's okay to step on people's lives and ruining. And again, the corruption. Thank you for taking the time. I know it's Sunday. It's raining here. It's nice out nonetheless. People are still up and down in the rain, fishing. I'm enjoying the water as usual. But I want to again reach out to you. So reach out and don't just make this go to waste. I have a lot of experience with a lot of the corruption and the things I'm dealing with. As I said, God put you in places sometimes you wonder why, and it's for a reason. It's because I have a duty and a responsibility to educate you, the listener or the viewer, who probably never had this kind of experience, hopefully won't have this kind of experience, but to make you conscious that it does exist and that you have to play a role so it doesn't get to a point where you, your family, your friends, your neighbors, the people around you, aren't affected negatively in the long and the short run. Again, I'm asking you to play a role. If you don't want to be aggressively out there, I understand that. But you could passively reach out to people and tell them, let's get together. And if you don't want to do it, get in touch with me. Send me a comment. Let's contact each other. Let's work, reach out, and work together to achieve the best objective that's possible, so we can have the best lifestyle possible. I don't know about you, but most of us have forgotten that the main purpose of us living is to have a good life, a happy life. And in fact, happiness is the premium when it comes to living. And most of us these days don't even smile, can't even smile. All right? So thanks again, and looking forward to hear from you. Share not only this video, but share all the other videos. Everyone has a message. And I had done 2 videos which showed me preparing for court. And the reason why I did that was to say to people, when you're going to court, most of the time I have attorneys going, and this is what they do. I was a little dazed on occasion, but I was doing it really slow so you could follow that. You can go in and represent yourself, and you have the right to represent yourself. And don't let attorneys go in there and think you don't have the power or the intelligence to go into court and demand your right to go into court and represent situations. And it doesn't have to be situations where somebody did something wrong to you, or it could be situations where you see a constitutional issue that's wrong for community and society that's being violated. Get together with your friends and take it to court. Demand your rights, because unless you do that now, you won't understand your civic responsibility and your duty, and that it's up to you to protect your own right. Again, thank you. Let's work together and let's get the job done before it's too late. All right, thanks again.